Well, good morning. So good to be with all of you. I'd like to commend all of you. The announcement that was made last week concerning how much has been pledged, and as of equal importance, how many have volunteered in several capacities for the next several months is just short of amazing. And you are to be commended for your heart and the sacrifices that you have made and will continue to make. And just how exciting it is, as we've said from the very beginning, to undertake what's in front of us with a campaign. And for those of you that kind of have your finger on the pulse of the church just throughout this area and throughout the nation, we really are fortunate of what God is doing among us and how God is moving, how God is working, and how we have the opportunity to do exactly what we've just read in the book of Exodus, and that is to follow God's leadership. That's what Israel did with the pillar of cloud by day and the fire by night, and we get to do the same. And we get to do it knowing that wherever God leads us and however He leads us we will always end up where we need to be. So whatever it is that's in front of us over the next several weeks and the next several months, I am looking forward to God's leadership. And I would go ahead and say that I know those numbers from the funds already pledged, and of course those of us that have already been willing to volunteer. That's not our why for doing this. Our why is what two visitors told me last week on their way out when they stayed and heard the announcement. And that was that as they surveyed this auditorium and then everybody who was coming up from the overflow downstairs, that if they had gotten here even just a smidge later, that they would have almost not had a place to sit. The why is not a building. Never has been. Building is not the end. A building, a facility, an upgrade, whatever it is that we're going to be talking about, it's just a means to an end. God is the end, specifically His glory, and people are the end. And the things that we have, the actual things, are just tools that we place in the hands of God with full trust, knowing that He will use them for His glory and to reach people. And that's all that really matters. And that's what we keep our focus on. So I appreciate you participating in the acts of grace that you have. And I look forward to what God has in store for us. Alex and Laura, thank you for choosing this family. And we look forward to getting to know you, but even more importantly, serving this amazing God alongside of you. And having the contributions that you'll be able to bring our way. What is something that we can use but never own? What is something that we can spend but we can never save? And what is something that we can lose and we will never find it once it's lost? If the answer that came out of your heart through your mind is the word time, then you would be correct. This morning I want us to look at a conversation between two kings. A man by the name of King David, who would sit on my right, your left. And an individual that you know of very well by the name of King Jesus, who would sit on my left, your right. And the conversation centers around time. It centers around time. And what I'd like to do as we put this conversation together is take two texts that you have read. One from the Hebrew Bible of Psalm 39. And one from Matthew 28, and how both kings teach us and emphasize to us time. Psalm 39 teaches us and teaches me that my days are few. And as you read and walked through Matthew 28, and maybe you didn't realize this or not, but if you didn't, here you go. Matthew 28 teaches me what my days are for. If my days are few, then what are they for? If I am to learn that my days are few, then what am I to use these days for? And this morning, I want both kings to not only teach us in their own unique way, but to also motivate us to make sure that we learn with our minds and our hearts that our days are few, and that we learn with our minds and our hearts that ultimately impact our actions on what our days are for. And I want to give you three things from the Kings. David would use the imagery within the psalm to make sure that we know why our days are few. He'll say in Psalm 39 in the first part of verse 4 that we are merely moving shadows. We are merely moving shadows. And he uses this imagery, and I love it because if you'll just take but just a few minutes, maybe 5 in your yard, maybe 10 if you wanted, or you could go even longer if you'd like. But you will see over the course of time, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, you'll see the shadow of the tree in your yard move. You'll see the shadow of your bush move. You'll see the shadow of your house move. That image comes to mind and it just moves. But the other aspect of what David wants to emphasize is not only are we just merely moving shadows, but there is always an end to the shadow. The nighttime comes and the shadow is gone. Maybe you'll get a little bit of a shadow from the moon, but at some point, even the shadow is just covered up with the darkness. It gets lost until the next morning. If you have ever thought about that or just sat with that reality. And what David wants us to know, and what the Spirit through King David wants us to know, is not just the fact that time is fleeting and it goes by fast, but it's to emphasize that age-old thing that we've tried to emphasize through numerous mediums like this, your own Bible study, whether it's together as a group or just by yourself. Everything is temporary. That's why he uses the word shadow. It's not just that it goes by fast, it's that everything is temporary. It's so easy just to be like the creatures of the ocean. We spend all of our time on the below, and yet there's a whole world on the upside. Every now and then we need to be reminded, everything that I'm pursuing, everything that I'm chasing, everything that I'm building, everything that I want for myself, that I want for my family, even with what we want for the congregation, it's all temporary. And so David would say it's temporary because the ultimate shadow gets lost. It gets folded into at his time, what David would say is the ultimate event. Everybody in this room is headed towards a funeral. It's our own. Others will stand in a setting like this and talk about me. And hopefully they'll say all sorts of things about me that are good and wholesome and what have you. It's called an obituary. But ultimately, everything about my life is going to, as a shadow, will be folded in to the great shadow that is death. And the thing about David and others within the Old Testament is just how unnerving that is. You just don't get used to it. Even for those of you that work in it almost on a day-to-day basis, you just still don't get numb to it. Maybe you get used to it in the sense that it's a part of the job, but there's still a part of you that just says this shouldn't be right. It's just not supposed to be this way. And it's unnerving to the core. It just shakes us. Even if we never say anything out loud, it rattles us to the very core. We just don't like hearing things like this said out loud. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like talking about things like this out loud. But this is what Scripture does. And it tells us about that reality. That at some point, me, the merely moving shadow, will be folded into the great shadow. And that's what King David teaches me. And my days are few. But when I finally get to Matthew 28, and I sit at the feet of King Jesus, I realize that I don't have to be unnerved as much as I feel when we talk about death. Because He's not here. He has risen. King Jesus says there's life after death. It's not just death after life. There's life, and then afterwards is death, and then after that is life. And now all this unnerving that I want to ignore and kind of want to push down and bury and not really talk about because it's just so depressing and so all of this and so all of that. Jesus walks on here and says, I want you to hear what King David is saying, and don't get wrapped up so much in the temporary, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, that you forget that there is life after death, that there is an existence. And it's not just a floating in the sky, it's a concrete that you can't touch and you can't smell, but because of faith, you are convicted and assured that it is there, as much as this thing that you're hearing and seeing right now. And what King Jesus would tell us is that where David didn't have as much confidence perhaps on the other side because Jesus is resurrected, that our days today are for us to have confidence in life after death. That's what these days are for. Not the days to have confidence in the bank account that'll show up, not in the confidence in my own ability, not in the confidence of somebody else's wisdom and knowledge that they'll pass on to me that will enhance my life. The most important part of the days now, these short few days, that they are that way, they are just temporary. They are for me to have confidence when I am resurrected. That is what these days are for. More than anything else. Not confidence for the next doctor's appointment, not confidence for the next test, not confidence for the next resume, not confidence for the next interview. It is for me to fast forward, to one day know that yes, the great shadow will overshadow my life, but it won't overshadow it forever, and I'm coming back, and you are too. And what waits for us is in how we use these days now, these short few days now, will determine the confidence that we have on that day. These days are short, but they are for confidence. King David emphasizes the shortness. King Jesus says, let's make sure you're confident and ready when that day approaches. I like what Nathaniel Hawthorne said as we close that point and move to the second one, but he says simply this: the time flies over us, but leaves its shadow behind. Time flies over us, but it leaves its shadow behind. If you're here this morning and you need to consider that confidence on what that day is when you meet Jesus, today's a good day for you to reach out, and we're ready to help you. Because we want you to have confidence as much as anything else about that day. I like what William Penn said about time in the short days. He said, time is what we want the most. And how true that is. But once we finally have it, time is what we use the worst. And how true that is. As David talks about the mere shadows that exist and the short few days that we have, and yes, he's talking about not literal days, but your years are short. We just know this. We know this. It goes by super fast. We all want time. Even this week, you may have said, if I just only had more time, I could. And if you didn't know that, I did. I said that to myself numerous times. But it hit me like a ton of bricks when I came across that quote. Because over the last 7 days, there was opportunity when I finally got what I wanted. I did have time. And I used it in the worst ways you could imagine. So, David says in his psalm that even though we are merely shadows, here's some ideas, here's some pictures of how we use that time once we get it. For some of us, we just heap up wealth. We're chasing something, thinking that the comfort and the convenience of this life is what's most important. So when we're young, we're chasing up that wealth so that we can afford that home and drive that car. And if we have children now or future children, that we can be able to put them in the best position to succeed with their academic pursuit and their education. For the rest of us, there comes a point where just the light comes on and we switch and we start heaping up the wealth because we know we're not going to be able to work for the rest of our life. And so we're looking after retirement and we're checking the Dow and we're making sure the investments are on par and what are the ebbs and the flows, and we remind ourselves time is our biggest asset when it comes to investment, but we're chasing. What we have this, we'll heap it up for ourselves. So it's that one closet that just about everybody has that is just completely full. And if you don't have a clean closet, if you don't have a closet like that, let me know your secret, and I would love to follow. But everybody has that one place where we've just kind of heaped everything. We've just stored it. We've just stored it. Maybe it's a closet, maybe it's a garage, maybe it's an attic, maybe you went out and bought a new shed so they could have it. But either way, there are images in our own life where we're heaping up things, and that's what we're pursuing. For others of us, it's just give me my life. Now, David would acknowledge that rescue me from my rebellion, but we're pushing back because what we value more than anything, let me live my life the way that I want it. Give me my freedom, give me my independence, let me make my decisions, let me chart my path. All of that is great, but that's what we end up pursuing. Well, what happens? And we know this. When we finally get the independence and the freedom, it's not cracked up. It's not what it's all cracked up to be, is it? Because there are other things that are now dictating that freedom. I'm an adult. Do you know that every day this next week for me was planned last Monday? You ever had a week like that? Let me get out of this day. Let me survive this week before my next week is planned, and yet it's relentless. It's relentless. I'm planning. My freedom is not necessarily what I thought it was to be. My independence was never really what it promised to be. It's interesting that David said, rescue me from that. That's how I'm using this mere shadow. Rescue me from that. And of course, and someone mentioned this in Bible class this morning in the Psalms class, but what I heard earlier, this individual in Bible class said we ought to be pilgrims, and what I heard earlier this week within a lesson, this life ought to be like a hotel, but we treat it more like a house. We have more roots in this life than what we probably would admit. And yet David says toward that psalm that just remind me I'm a traveler passing through. But we probably have more house roots in this life than we do hotel roots. And so I seek these things. I pursue them. I chase them. My decisions are influenced by these. And these are just some things. There are other things that could be mentioned in all of this, but nonetheless, I just pursue it. I chase it. I seek. That's what I'm looking for. And a few women in Matthew 28 quietly and powerfully whisper what we should seek above all. The angel admits to them, I know that you seek Jesus. The short days that we have are for us to seek Jesus. The way that you pursue your comfortability and convenience for finances should be the same passion that you have to find Jesus. The same passion and excitement that you're using right now to make sure that there is stability and certainty for yourself and your family should be the same passion and the same excitement to chase Jesus. The impact of the decisions you've made for all the things on this earth should pale in comparison to the impact that you make on the decision, not just to seek Jesus, but to find Him. Because the days are short, and those short days are for us to find Him. And if you haven't found Him, we want to help you find Him. We want to help you do that. And that's what King Jesus tells us. So I'd ask you this question. If the people that are closest to you were to be asked this question about you, what would their answer be? And the answer is this: do the people who know me best know that I seek Jesus? Do the people who know me best know that I seek Jesus? And the last thing, David will say in Psalm 39 and verse 11, is that each of us is but a breath. His son Solomon will use that breath later on in the book of Ecclesiastes numerous times. When we're little, we like this time of year because we love to be able to see our breath in the very cold air. Or at least I did. I thought it was just cool to be able to see that. But that's what life is, David says. It's that breath in a cold air. And at some point, the light gets strong enough that you cease seeing the breath in the cold air. Each of us, he says, is merely a breath. And if we were to stay right in this psalm, King David would say that means that you ought to count your days and then make those days count. For some of you, it was for your children the first day of high school. For others, the first day of college. For others, the first day of maybe being a single man or a single woman. Others of us, the first day is coming up of being just two, as a husband and wife, because a child is on the way. This is my first day of a job. This is my first day of before retirement. Whatever it is, you can just think there's always a first. And David would say, and rightly so, because it's an aspect of wisdom, it's because if you know that, then you'll make it count. And that's true. I want you to take that principle and overlay it with what King Jesus is going to tell us. Because where King David would say, I want you to make your days count, King Jesus says, I want you to actually invest your days. I don't want you to just count them. I want you to invest them. But I don't want you to invest them in all the things of this life that are just mere shadows. Here's what I want you to invest it in. Go and therefore make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always. You already know where you're going today. You woke up knowing that you were coming here, but after here, you know where you're going. Lunch, at home, a restaurant. You already know. And as followers of Jesus, we already know too. Go therefore, he says. And he tells us this, not because he wants us to count days. That's what King David wants us to do. King Jesus says, I want you to take the short few days you've got, and I want you to invest them in something that you may not ever see in this life. You may not see that disciple, but you're investing in that individual right now. And that disciple may be your son. That disciple may be your daughter. It may be your grandson. It may be your granddaughter. But invest. We'll make sure that we're investing in a college fund. We'll make sure that if we have adult children with grandchildren that we contribute to that college fund. We're making an investment that's not going to be realized maybe for 10, maybe 18 years, but we're making the investment, or we wish we would have. Don't be the one who had wished when the short days are drawing to an end that you wished that you would have made more disciples. That you wished that you would have done more, done things different. King David wants us to count, and that's true. King Jesus wants us to invest. And so the last thing that I'll bring to you, and David, this will be the conclusion. So I've issued an invitation throughout the sermon, and the time is quickly coming to see what you'll do with it. But I'll close with this, and I want it to be on our minds, and I want it to be on our hearts. Psalm 39 asks the right question. And the right question is this: how long do I have? And Matthew 28 provides us the right answer. And the right answer is this: long enough to change the world, if you will obey. Psalm 39 asks the right question. How long do I have? Matthew 28 gives the right answer. Long enough to change the world. Your world, your family's world, the world. If you'll just but obey. The lesson is yours as we stand and sing.